Hello and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Kristen Ashley. I'm Trisha, and for the past 4.5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books team learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk to Kristen. Kristen Ashley grew up in Indiana and has lived in Colorado and the West Country of England. But now she calls the Valley of the Sun home. Thus, she's been blessed to have friends and family all around the globe. And her posse is loopy, to say the least. But loopy's good when you want to write. Kristen's published over 70 romance novels, and her work's been translated into 14 different languages. She's sold over 3 million books and has won or been nominated for numerous awards. She started the Rock Chick Nation as a way to give back to her readers, and RCN has a variety of programs to promote a strong female community and has given over $146,000 to women's charity. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi there.
Hey, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Good. Glad to hear. Well, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here talking to us today.
I'm happy to be talking to somebody after this quarantine and being in my house and seeing minimal people for 5 months. It's fun to have something to get up and do. Put lipstick on for.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, I always like to get started by getting a little background, and we always want to know when you decided that being an author is your calling.
Well, I've always been an avid reader, and I was reading romance novels, the little White Harlequin Presents. When I was 12 or 13, my mom was a subscriber, and I loved those books. And I was a huge letter writer. My mom used to buy me stationery, and I would write people letters, and I have no idea what I said. I mean, what does a 12-year-old have to say? But I was constantly writing family members, and I just thought, oh, wouldn't this be the greatest job ever to be a romance novelist, and not a novelist, but a romance novelist. And in my 20s, I started writing romance, and I'm 52 now, so that's how long I've been writing. And I started publishing in 2008. And my books took off around in 2011. So that's how long that journey lasted. Long journey. But since I was, before I was a teenager, I knew I wanted to be a novelist, a romance novelist.
Now, within romance, you write more, a lot of different subgenres, right?
Yes, yeah. I write contemporary romance, and I write fantasy, I write paranormal, I write suspense, and I write action romance. So I run the gamut. whatever spirit moves me.
Nice. Do you find that being that diverse, your readers stay with you? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and it's something that is talked about a lot. Because my career trajectory was the way it was, I tried to get published through New York. I tried to go through traditional publishing, because when I started writing, there wasn't independent. It wasn't easy to independently publish yourself. So I tried for a good decade to find an agent or a publisher, and nobody wanted. I have a very specific, unusual voice in telling my stories, and I told different types of stories. It wasn't your classic 80s romance novel type of thing. And so but I never stopped writing, even though I couldn't find an agent and I couldn't find any interest in it. I never stopped writing. So when I started independently publishing, I had about 27 novels, either written or mostly written. And because
Hmm.
I didn't have a contractor, I didn't have anybody telling me what to write. I wrote whatever I wanted. And so when I started independently publishing, I would publish like 4 books a month. I was just
Hmm.
publishing everything that I had. So when people found me, all those novels were there. The paranormal
Hmm.
novels were there, the fantasy novels were there. So when they got to know me, they knew that I jumped genres. So
Hmm.
that's part of my brand, quote unquote. I think it's harder for people who have established a readership to
Hmm.
jump a genre, because your readers like what you do and they're used to what you do, and there's comfort in knowing what you're going to get, and some people just don't like fantasy, or they're not into vampires or sci-fi or cowboys or whatever. But fortunately for me, my readers knew that they could get just about anything from me, because even after I started publishing, I picked up some more genres as well. I started to do some erotica, and I just recently published a serial fantasy with multiple points of view. So I'm
Hmm.
always challenging myself and doing something different, and hopefully giving my readers something new, so they don't it doesn't
Hmm.
get staid and old and predictable.
Right. That's a good call out. And I think that it's usual now, if you are writing in multiple genres, to use pen names, but you chose not to do that. So you built your brand around essentially offering diversity.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I had a conversation with Natasha. Bloggers are very important, and have really helped me with my career. And
Hmm.
Natasha is a book junkie, is a big romance blogger, and she's also a friend of mine. And when I was going to jump into erotica, yeah, I was considering using a pen name. And she
Hmm.
said, no, no, don't, own it, own it. And it really made me think about that. Now, a marketing person and a publisher might have a different answer for you for that if you're thinking about jumping genres. But I have a very good relationship with my readers. I was trying to do this for so long that, and I don't think any author takes their readers for granted. We love our readers
Hmm.
and we nurture our readers, and we take care of them. And so I spend a lot of time doing that because I love doing it, but also,
Hmm.
and it's a great sisterhood, but also it's part of my job. And I just communicated with them whenever this happens, whenever I do something like this, with especially the erotica. I just said, this is what's happening, and you might want to read a sample of this, or read the tease, or really have a look at it before you dive in, because it might not be for
Hmm.
you. And just warn them, and kind of give permission, because they feel very loyal to you,
Hmm.
to not go on this journey with you if they don't feel like it. And I think it's really important to communication is always like one of the most important things you could do in anything in life, and including this. So yeah, I mean, the serial I just did, the serial fantasy, I don't like cliffhangers, and I've only ever written one book with a cliffhanger in the 70 some books I've written, and that was accidentally, that a book I just never got back to. Um, and so I let everybody know, okay, these have cliffhangers, and they're big cliffhangers. But I also scheduled the books to come out as quickly as possible, so people weren't waiting 6 months to find out what
Hmm.
happened to the characters.
You just actually just did that in July, correct? You just released a series in July?
Yes, yeah, it was an Audible exclusive series that I did with Audible, and it was great, and it was a really cool project with Audible, and they released it. They started releasing it last November, and they released it every month, which I
Uh-huh.
think was hard for listeners. And then in July, one book a week. It's The
Uh-huh.
Rising. I released a book a week. Yeah, so that was my July.
Good, good. Now, I always love asking authors who their favorite character from their books is, because a lot of authors they'll tell you somebody else's, character out of somebody else's book, but they're always like, I don't know. So who's your favorite character from your books?
I could definitely say it's Tex from the Rock Chick books. Tex is he's one of a kind, and he's very, very funny. He's really crazy. He's described as, he looks like a serial killer, but he's a idiot savant barista. He makes the best coffees in Denver. And he's a Vietnam vet. He was disenfranchised. He has a very extreme sense of justice, and he would sit on his front porch and keep his with the shotgun across his lap and night vision goggles on, and he would keep his neighborhood safe. And he would do anything for the heroine, the Rock Chicks, the heroines in that series. And as the series goes along, they all use it's all kind of centered around this used bookstore called Fortnum's that has a coffee cart in the front, a coffee bar in the front. And the two men that work there, Duke and Tex, they become kind of the male foundation, the patriarchs of the group, crazy patriarchs, because Tex blows up a building at one point, and there's all sorts of things that Tex goes on, but he would put it, and he does put himself in the path of a bullet for these girls. Once he is kind of adopted into the fold and pulled out of his home and brought back into the world and into society, he makes this family, and he's actually based on a real person that that lived across the street from me in Denver, and I'd only ever met him once. His name was Tex. He was a Vietnam vet. He would sit on his porch with a shotgun, and he would keep our neighborhood safe. And we'd have parties, and we'd have to like watch out for our friends and like when a friend came, open the door and say, Tex, it's all right, they're with us, so he didn't, like tack them to the ground or something. But I remember one morning coming out, and this was unusual, and it wasn't the greatest part of town. I didn't make a lot of money. I lived in, in a fabulous part of town with great, a great history, but it was very low income. And I remember going out to my car, and somebody had busted into my car, and the glass was everywhere, and they'd stolen my radio, and I felt this hand land on the back on my head, and I turned around and I looked up, and there's this huge, crazy looking guy, and it was Tex, and he said, I'm sorry I wasn't out last night.
Oh.
And he said, and by the way, you have a brake light out, you need to get that fixed. And just the concept of this person, he doesn't know me, he doesn't know my name. That is the only conversation we ever had, and that was all. I think I said thank you. That's all I said.
Mm-hmm.
But he took personal responsibility for my safety and my belongings, and knew I had a brake light out. That's Tex in a nutshell. So that he had to be in a book, and he had to be immortalized in that way, and there he is.
Oh, it's a wonderful. That's a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So this leads me to the next question. Are a lot of your characters based on people that you meet in real life, or?
Yes, yeah, actually quite a bit. Or I'll give them certain mannerisms or attributes of someone, and that's my trick to kind of infuse the love I have for somebody in a character. And hopefully readers will feel that love and they'll fall in love with that character. Like there's a character in Rock Chick Rescue named Trixie, and she has my very good friend Dixie's hands, and she is nothing like Dixie, but she just has her hands. And in a book I just published, Dream Maker, the heroine is a little bit like my niece. She's not my niece, but she's just a little bit like my guy, because I wouldn't write a romance novel about my niece. But she just has, my niece is brilliant. Both of my nieces are incredibly intelligent, girls, and one's a nurse and one's an engineer. And I'm not science, I'm not chemistry, I'm not, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. But they are very, they know everything about that. So and hopefully and my niece is a little bit of a geek, she's a little bit of a nerd,
Uh-huh.
and she plays Dungeons and Dragons, and so I made a character kind of like that. So I do that a lot. Yeah.
Now, you've talked a lot about your readers, and you're very passionate and loyal to your readers. Now, can you tell me a little bit about Rock Chick Nation? This is we
Yeah.
talked a little bit in the intro, but I'm interested to hear more about Rock Chick Nation.
Um, a Rock Chick Nation, I love it, and I'm hoping I had sat down recently. When you turn 50, you kind of take stock, and I'm living my dream, and I've done all the things I wanted to do, and so I thought, what's next for me? And I would like to spend more time on Rock Chick, doing the things that I do with Rock Chick Nation. But what it is I I'm so thankful for my life as it is that I get to write for a living. That but I can't like go on a world tour and meet every single one of my readers and thank them for giving me this beautiful life. So I decided to give back to them in certain ways. And so we do three things. We have Rock Chick Rewards, where my readers will nominate women's charities. And we will raise money for those charities. So we have a number of charities that we raise money for, and I'm going to be doing a variety of things, new things. We sell swag, we sell um,
Mhm.
phone covers and beach towels and stuff with, like, you see the Trucks Gym sign back here, with
Mhm.
logos from my books, and we give that money to charity. I'm doing a cookbook that comes out in November that it's
Oh,
called
wow.
Dream Bites. Yeah, and it's the commandos in one of my series are all cooks. They love to cook, so they're I worked with Suzanne Johnson, and she's a great home cook. She created all these recipes for my commandos, and I did some short stories. It's a really, really fun book, and there's a lot of special guest stars in that novel, or in that cookbook. It's not a novel,
Uh-huh.
and so all the my half of the proceeds will go to the Rock Chick Nation charities, and I'm doing a variety of things with that. And then there's the Rock Chick um, recharges, which is I ask my readers to, if I'm going to be somewhere, we did one in Chicago, we did one in Atlanta, I'll ask readers to nominate somebody who needs a good night out, a fun night out,
Mhm.
and then I will take this group of gals to a really nice dinner, and it's all on me. And then I will put together a packet of goodies, and they're usually my favorite things, clothes and makeup and face stuff and hair stuff, and I'll spoil them rotten, and we'll drink a lot and we'll eat a lot, and usually they get to talking amongst themselves, and it's a really fun night, and we've had a lot of great rechargers that we've met on those nights. And then the last big thing is the Rock Chick Rendezvous, which are just a massive weekend party that I put together. um, we have cocktail hours, and we have coffee mornings and book signings and question and answer, and then we have this massive, massive party with bars and dancing and DJs. And the last one we had a drag queen who was our MC, and she was fabulous. And we're obviously kind of had to put a hold on that because of COVID, but we're doing another one again in Denver in 2022. So,
2022.
and
Okay.
when we go to Denver, most of my books are set in Denver, so we do a road rally in Denver, which is really fun, very, very fun. So yeah, yeah. So that's my Rock Chick Nation.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that the swag, so if somebody wanted to check out the swag that you have, that where the proceeds go to these women's charities, where would they look for it?
You go to KristenAshley.net, and there's across the top of my website, it says Rock Chick Nation, and you go in and you go to Rock Chick Rewards and the Rock Chick Nation shop, and it'll take you to a Teespring shop, and all of the goodies are there.
Wonderful. All right. So let's go back to talking about, I know that you talked about the fact that this was a long journey. For a long time you had all these books and you haven't been weren't able to publish them. But when did you realize that you could be a full-time author? When did that kick in?
Well, I was probably 8 years after I had been a full-time author. You know, you don't ever really trust it. You know, you're like, okay, this is gonna go away tomorrow. All my books are gonna. I'm gonna wake up and all my books are going to tank. Yeah, it actually happened. It, it went very fast, even after it took so long. So, you know, so I was trying to get
Mhm.
published for probably over a decade. And then I quit my job. I had all these books written, and I just decided to quit my job and just focus on this for a year. You know, I had a whole plan,
Mhm.
and I was going to just completely just, you know, set up my website, my newsletter, you know, my social media, get the books as cleaned as I possibly could, get them, get covers for them, and just do everything I could to, you know, I think I had to sell like 30 books a day to make the salary that I had been making before as a charity executive. And
Mhm.
or 35 or something like that. And that's actually a lot of books. But I also had
Mhm.
like 27 books to publish. So I thought, well, unless, you know, there's millions of readers, romance is a huge genre. I should be able to sell 30 books a day. I mean, for goodness sake. Well, for 6 months, I sold a book a week. And that was just not working. And then again, I mentioned the bloggers earlier. Marie's book
Mhm.
blog. Marie's reviewed my novel Sweet Dreams, and
Mhm.
I got up in the morning. I lived in England at the time. I got up in the morning and I'd sold like 15 copies, and I was like, "What? What's that all about?" I was all excited. And the next day it was 15 copies again, and I think the next day after that was 8. And I'm like, "Okay, there we go." Well, that's the end of that. And then the next day it was 15, and the next day it was like 300. And then
Oh,
all
wow.
the other books were like 100, 200, and then it was like 4,000, and then it was like 10,000. And what is going on here? It just completely exploded. And
Uh-huh.
you know, obviously, I'm not, I wish I was selling that much right now. Um, but that, you know, that's where it began, and I never had another job again. You know, I've been doing nothing but writing since then,
Gotcha.
fortunately.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, yeah, it was happy. My sister called it, it was the perfect storm, and
Uh-huh.
it was the perfect storm. Yeah, yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the fact that you were going to go all in and you put together a website and started doing some additional marketing tactics. Can you talk a little bit about, what those marketing tactics were when you were just started versus what you're doing now?
The marketing tactics then were, it definitely is, you know, and the river divides, and you just are on the rapids and you roll with it. But back then, social media was a really big thing. You know, people were finding
Mhm.
you on, I don't even think Instagram was a thing back then. So people were
Mhm.
finding you on Twitter and Facebook, and you would sell your books there. And
Mhm.
then the newsletters started to be a big thing. But social media was huge, and bloggers were huge. You wanted a
Mhm.
blogger to reach and review your book. I mean, that's an extreme example. You know, Marie's
Mhm.
blogging about my book, but that, you know, that's true. I mean, and Natasha and
Mhm.
Vilma and Agents of Romance. I mean, these bloggers, they have huge followings,
Mhm.
and they still have a great deal of you know, a huge voice, especially in romance.
Mhm.
I can't say for other genres, but I'm very thankful for
Mhm.
bloggers, you know, to this day. I love bloggers, and I follow a lot of bloggers, and you know, you get to find a blogger who has your sensibility or your tastes, and that's where you find great new authors too. So,
Mhm.
you know, I use them as well. So those were the big ones back then.
So did you reach out to the bloggers and give them free samples? How did they find your content
In the
and start,
beginning,
talking
they
about it?
found me, but
Mhm.
now you reach out, and you know, and they have ways to submit. I mean, they're not robots. They can't read like 50 books a day. So you submit to them, or you query them, and they'll tell you how. You go to their websites and they'll
Hmm.
explain how you can do that. And you
Hmm.
approach them and just be respectful, and hope that they'll have time to get to your book.
Gotcha. Now, newsletters are often a big thing with authors, and so talk a little bit about newsletters. Do you use them?
Yes, definitely. And that's another. And uh, uh, right now, I mean, this is the flowing on the rapids thing. There was quite a bit of time where my newsletter was my most powerful tool, and I could,
Hmm.
I could pay the fees because I use MailChimp. I could pay the
Hmm.
fees for MailChimp in one newsletter that I sent, because my pre-orders
Right.
for whatever book I was would cover it for the year. For the year, that's a lot. you know
Yeah.
Now I don't see the same thing happening. Now
Hmm.
I actually has swung back to social media being more of a tool, especially Instagram is a big thing.
Hmm.
So social media it is bigger again
Hmm.
than my newsletter, but I give exclusives in my newsletter, and I do special things in my newsletter. So anybody that subscribes to my newsletter, they get a lot of the news first. They always get a cover
Hmm.
reveal first. They always get the first, chance at the buy links and things like that. So, and I try to do something fun and exciting just for newsletter readers each time.
Hmm.
So yeah, I haven't given up on the. It's just not. It's just in that zone now where you have to ride this wave, and then, but just be aware that there might be another wave that you're going to have to catch and go in that direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, author groups are a big thing. Are you part of any author groups?
No, no, no. I have a
Mhm.
lot of sister writer friends, but I don't.
Okay.
But I'm not, like officially involved in an author group. I am part of 1001 Dark Nights, but I
Uh-huh.
don't think that's what you mean.
Probably not.
No.
But but I think to your point, having those sister writers, having some sort of support network with other writers is really important, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes. We help each other a lot. One of the things, when I was just starting out and publishing in England, and feeling very, I had gone to an English, the English equivalent of Romance Writers of America. So whatever the English equivalent of that was, and it was not a good experience, sadly.
Oh.
There were literally, at this long table, there were the unpublished writers there and the published writers there, and the twain did not meet. And
Oh.
it was really uncomfortable. And I
Mhm.
really remember, I wish I remember her name, but the most successful writer, this, and I should have clued in at this point, the most successful writer there specifically left the published area and sat with the unpublished people and talked to all of us. And she was incredibly supportive and
Mhm.
positive, and she had so many great things to say and lots of good advice. But I went to that and I thought, oh my God, these women are terrible. I mean, that's just mean, that you would not share your knowledge, and that
Uh-huh.
you would make these folks feel inferior. Because anyway, so I was worried about meeting writers because I just
Mhm.
thought it would be competitive and catty. Oh my gosh, it's not that at all. It's such a supportive community. I mean, we'll
Mhm.
share tactics and we'll commiserate about, things that happen and emails we get, people that don't like us. And it's just, and again, like talking about jumping genres and how that worked for you,
Mhm.
yeah, it definitely my best resource bar none, is going to my girls and talking to them and seeing what works for them and what doesn't. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Can you walk us through step by step, walk us through your process of marketing a book?
I can. I think that you need to, and I know this probably, for especially for people that are super creative and arty, they hate the idea of this, but I start thinking about how the marketing plan is going to go for a book when I'm writing it. You kind of get this sense of how you're going to brand that marketing plan while you're writing the book. And I will, while I'm writing the book, pull teaser quotes, or think of blurbs, think of excerpts that I would pull. This will be really good. This will catch people's attention. This little section is a good way to market this book. And I'll make notes of all of that to and other things that you do. Like I have a lot of music in my books, and I have a lot of food in my books, and so I'll it could be a Spotify list, or it could be a recipe that I put on my website. So you think about all of that, and then I go to my designer and create the book cover. And I'm very specific about my self-published book covers. I'm not a big fan of the whole, old romance novel thing. I'm not a big fan of men with bare chests on my covers. And I like my covers to kind of reflect what the book is, rather than and a marketing person will probably tell you that this is very, very wrong. I like my covers to reflect what's in the book, not what's going to sell on a shelf. So I want people to look at the cover, and for it to be a good, and I have a professional designer, it to be a good eye-catching cover, but some of my covers don't even look like romance novels. But I want you to kind of get a sense of what the book is about. So I'm not saying that everybody should do that, because it might not work for everybody. And then we build a marketing, like a visual marketing plan around that. So what your teaser graphics are going to be, or what your marketing graphics are going to be, and these are the things that you put on social media and in your newsletters and stuff. It should all have a good vibe, and it should have the feel of the book and the cover in it. And then I kind of decide how much money I want to spend on stuff, because you've got your social media, you've got your newsletter. If you're on KDP, you should have an Author Central all set up. So, and you claim your book when you have the pre-order, so people will get their emails about, the pre-orders happening. You should have your BookBub author section set up, and be getting people to follow you as an author on Amazon, and then am I going to spend money on advertising, and think about that, and you'll see how pre-orders go, and whether you need to do that kind of thing. So, and then of course your newsletters and your cover reveals, and it's never comfortable. I think that some people really have fun marketing their books and selling their books. I've been doing it now for 12 years. I've never been comfortable with it. I just don't like, I would much rather talk to my readers and just swap recipes and talk about facial, the facial I did last night, or what TV shows I really love, or whatever, rather than sell my books. But they actually want to know about my books. They want me to tell them when my books are coming out. But then I don't like to hit people over the head. I don't like to constantly you say, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. But when it's close to releasing, I do step it up. I do, start really communicating quite a bit about it everywhere, so people will buy it. So
Good call outs. So I think that leads to the next question. Do you have a team that works with you in order to do this, or are you working solo?
I have a team. I have I like to, because I'm a hybrid author, I do work with some traditional publishers. I have kind of the same
Mhm,
thing that they do. So I have an editor and a proofer
mhm,
to edit my books and proof them. And then I have my designer who does all my covers and all my graphics for me, my brand, the Kristen Ashley brand, and branding all the books and the
mhm,
series. And then I have have an assistant, my sister, who helps with merchandise and publishing and things like that. And sometimes I work with some marketing people, and sometimes I work with some advertising companies that know the best places to put ads, you know, and et cetera. So yeah, it's not just me. I have an agent, so I have a lot of
uh-huh.
people on my team. Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming you didn't start with all those people on your team and that it grew organically.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Eventually, for me, I was beginning to spend all my time doing that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
I mean, I have a web guy, but I do my own. You have to take it. I did, and you have to take a moment and kind of decide where you're going to go with things, and you do need to let
mhm,
things go. You need to delegate. If you have the capacity, if you have the money to spend on this kind of thing, you need because you need to write books. I mean, people want you to write books. They really don't
mhm,
want you on social media all the time. They don't want you constantly doing live chats or whatever. They want you to write books because they want to read your books. Um,
mhm,
but there are things like I do everything on my all of the texts and everything. I do the website because I want it to be in my voice. If people come to my
mhm,
website, I want them to see me on my website. And the same thing with my social media. I don't have a social media manager that does my posts. I do all my
mhm.
my own posts. Everything else, I'm happy to, to give over if I possibly can give it over because I want to spend my time writing, talking to my readers and writing. Those are the two things I want to do with my time. So,
That makes a lot of sense. I think
yeah,
you've earned it. You've reached that point where you can do that.
yeah. So,
Can you talk a little bit about what surprised you the most when you started self-publishing?
um, I, I don't. Do you mean about the process of self-publishing or
Yeah,
being self-published? Well, how
I
easy it
think the
was.
process.
It was
Hmm.
super easy. It was kind of like after. I wish I'll need to dig it out. It's a bad memory. It would be an awful flashback. The rejection letters I got. When was my first rejection letter? I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Anyway, um, after all of that mess, just to like hit a few buttons and type in, some blurbs and stuff, and then you're like click, and then within like 48 hours your book's published. It was just, and I think when I go out in the world and talk to other writers and talk to, I don't like to call non-published writers aspiring writers because if you're a writer, you're a writer. It doesn't matter if you're published or not. But um, and I talk a lot about, how independent publishing, self-publishing is very, very viable, and
Hmm.
even now there's this stigma, and there are a lot of big name authors that started and stayed as independent
Hmm.
authors, and or big name authors that have moved to um, um, independently publishing themselves.
Hmm.
And I talk about that, and the sticking point I think for some of these people is they think the technical aspects of it um, are hard. They have no idea
Hmm.
how intuitive it is. If you write a book, the things that are asked when you publish on KDP, you're not going to go, oh, what's that? It's title, author, are there any other authors that are, what are the categories of this book that what are the key words of nothing, what's the price on this book? I mean, the things that you have to decide, like what you're going to price your book at, that's
Hmm.
something that you have to battle with yourself and decide, but it's not hard to set on KDP. So it's always surprising to me, and you can't convince people. You're like, you just need to go and look. The platform is just so easy. And honest to God, you will have published this book in like 5 minutes. And you
Right.
won't be, your head won't be exploding with, having to Google everything. What does that mean? What does that mean? So I think that was the thing that surprised me, was
Mhm.
just how easy it was to do.
Were there any red flags? We got a question. What are red flags? Any red flags to stay away from when you're self-publishing? Any that you know of?
Um, well, yeah. I would, first of all, I mean, even now, I have really long books, and even now, you'll find a lot of errors in my books. And readers don't like to see typos. And I read. It doesn't matter. I don't care who published you. I see typos all the time too, and because I just go around it, but it bothers a lot of people. So you need to invest if you're going to publish. You need to invest in it. You need to get somebody to edit, and you need to get somebody to proof. You need to have a cover that's well designed. So these are the things that I would suggest investing money in. Even
Mhm.
beyond marketing and advertising, and don't even think about that stuff. Invest in your work before you put it
Mhm.
out there. I didn't do any of that in the beginning. Back in, in 2011, none of my books were professionally edited. My husband had created the covers, and they were okay, but they weren't like they are now. And it was an explosion of independent publishing back then. So I think a lot of people were willing to forgive the fact that the books
Mhm.
weren't professionally done. But all of them have been edited, proofed, and their covers redone since then. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time taking care of that, and so I think those are major red flags now, because you just want, sadly, it is a product that people buy, and you want
Mhm.
it to be the best it can
Right.
be. And editing is also important, because like one of the most important editing comments I ever got was, consider the white space. Now, nobody thinks about that. I wouldn't think about that, but I read a book it was an independently published book, and there were natural paragraph breaks and there were natural breaks in the dialogue, but the writer did not use those breaks. And so on my Kindle, as every time I turn the page, it is a wall of text. It just,
Mhm.
and there was no white space. And I did that too when I started out. I was like, oh, these characters, everything I have to say is so important. I'm just going to get it all down. And I wasn't considering the fact that it's hard on a reader visually to take in a wall of text, page after page after page after page. This was a good book, and I
Mhm.
put it down because I was exhausted, but
Mhm.
by the daunting page after page of text. And those are the kind of things an editor can say, hey, think about a break here,
Mhm.
and that is a weird thing that you won't think of. It has nothing to do with changing your story or your characters, anything, but you could lose readers if you didn't do that,
Mhm.
if you know what I mean. So that's a big
Yeah.
red flag. And the other thing too is that's really important is once you put your stuff out there, it's out there, and you have to allow people to react to it. And not everybody's going to like it, and they're have a capacity to be very vocal with a very large audience about not liking what you do, and you just need to
Mhm.
zip it and move on. There are constructive criticisms that are good to have, and then there's snarky, awful, mean people that just want to rip you apart, and
Mhm.
you just have to step aside. You can't insert yourself in the discussion. You shouldn't be commenting on reviews. Just let people have the reaction to your work, and carry on. And it's hard and it hurts. You know, I remember I recently watched a documentary with David Bowie, and he was talking, you know, he was deep in his career in being interviewed, and he was talking about getting a bad review for one of his albums, and he said it's never stopped hurting. You know, and he's been, you know, by this time he'd been in the music business for 30 years. And I'm like, okay, if David Bowie does, if David Bowie hasn't gotten used to it, then then it's okay that I got my feelings hurt by reading that. So yeah, so those are the two big things.
I think your call out's great. It's just don't interact, right? So
Yes.
let people feel the way they're going to feel and let them respond the way they're going to respond, but be confident that your readers will find you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, and it's good if people are talking about you, they're talking about you. It's good.
Right.
It's not so good when you insert yourself in that discussion.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Agreed.
you'll quell it, and you don't want to quell it,
Yeah.
even if it's not good. You know, somebody might be saying, "I hate this," that when a heroine does something like this, 50 other people reading that comment will love when a heroine does that and go, "Oh, I need to read this book," because that's my kind of thing. You know, so
Right. Good call out.
yeah.
Um, so we have a couple questions around kind of your daily writing schedule and if you have tips and tricks for getting yourself out of getting yourself writing when you're blocked.
I am. I could write. I could like. Have you ever seen Romancing the Stone, the movie Romancing the
Yeah,
Stone?
I
In the
love
very
that movie.
beginning. Yeah, that's me. You know, where I don't have the post-it notes, but like the cat has food, I don't have food. You know, I have not showered. there's you know, I just immerse myself in the book, and I'm luckily I can do that. You know, where I just
Mhm.
and, you know, and I'm crying, and I'm oh my god, you know, this is the greatest, you know, this is the greatest book ever written. I love these characters. I'm never gonna be able to be with them again. But I tend to be far more creative in the morning, so I try to kind of really get my business done quickly in the morning, emails and scheduling social media and stuff, and then getting into writing. I don't, and knock on wood, I don't have any wood close to me, but knock on wood, I don't get blocked. However, the COVID situation has really messed with my head. You know,
Mhm.
it's kind of blown my motivation mojo out the window, and this is the first time I've ever experienced at the beginning, I was writing like crazy, but now this is
Mhm.
dragged on. It's just kind of like, oh my God, I just don't want to go watch next Netflix, you know, get a bag of chips and just like camp out. I can't do that because now I'm behind, but it's not flowing as much. And what I
Mhm.
do is I just write. You know, even if I'm writing and I'm like, this is rubbish. Ugh, ugh. I'm not, you know, I'm not feeling this. I keep going, and sometimes I'll say, okay, I need to get to because I can write anywhere. I usually write anywhere from four to 12,000 words a day. That's a lot.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah,
is a lot.
yeah. And I've had 20,000 word days. You know, when I'm really on a roll, and you know, like I'm
Mhm.
writing for 16 hours. Um, and so if so I'll say I'm going to get to 1,000 words, or I'm going to get to 2,000
Mhm.
words today, you know, and that's what I've
Mhm.
been, you know, even if it's not good. And what I find normally is that because I'm not in the moment and I'm not feeling it, I will go back to it the next morning. I'm like, oh, this is good. I just wasn't feeling it then, and you know, I don't have to throw all of this out. You know, I just need to tweak it a little bit, and this is great. I'm
Mhm.
rolling. So yeah. So just don't, you know, just even if it's 50 words, just keep. Eventually, the barrier will lift,
Mhm.
and you'll move on. And that's what I'm finding with this COVID thing is that and then I'll just like full steam ahead. But
Mhm.
another block might come, and then it's just and then wait for it to lift. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
No.
COVID's, I think, taken a toll on all of us and lasted a whole lot longer than any of us suspected.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah.
Um, so we have another question, and I just lost it. Oh, there
Uh-oh.
we go. When writing the next book in the River Rain series, will you have the fans pick character names, etc.?
Yes. Definitely. I decided at the beginning of speaking of COVID, at the beginning of the quarantine when we really were going in lockdown, and I think this was March, I don't remember. Anyway, I decided to write a book with my readers, and
Mhm.
so I did all these polls on Facebook to, pick names and, animals, and people put up pictures of their animals, and we talked about, like, my hero had like a three-legged dog, because one of my readers has a three-legged dog, and she was explaining how they develop muscles in different parts of their bodies, and so it's kind of surprising, and I put that in the book, and I just gave some of my readers' animals to the characters, and it was so fun. It was really, really fun to 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 and it was funny because and they picked the cover. My designer created 4 different covers, and they picked the cover, and none of my choices were picked. None of the things I mean, I don't think I think I none of them, the cover that I wanted wasn't, I mean, it was hilarious. But it was really fun, and so I liked it, and a lot of characters were introduced in that book, and I decided to
Mhm.
make it a series, and I'm going to do that with every
Mhm.
book in the series. Obviously the
Oh,
characters that
wow.
have been named are named, but I will go back to my readers, and we'll write those books together in that series. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's a wonderful way to include them. That's and
yeah,
reward them for reading. That's a great
yeah,
way to do that.
yeah. It was
Um,
really
it sounds like it. Um, this is a good one. What precautions need to be taken to protect yourself, family, and friends from the public while maintaining your privacy?
This is, yeah, it is a really good one. And also, just thinking about how much time you spend doing this. I mean, I
Mhm.
this was my dream, as I mentioned, this was my dream, and I always wanted to do this. So when my books took off, I completely descended in the whole book world, and
Mhm.
it's not an exaggeration to say that I would work 12 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and I did that for almost a solid decade. I
Oh,
that
wow.
yeah, yeah, it was but I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't regret
Mhm.
that at all. I loved it. It wasn't, it wasn't drudgery. It was
Mhm.
something that I really loved doing, but eventually you have to live your life for your own health and welfare, and you have to you feel the well. I mean, you have to have experiences so you can write about them. You have to meet
Right.
people and do things. So I would suggest to people starting out to make those boundaries early, and
Mhm.
also really consider about because in a weird sense, you personally are your brand, and
Mhm.
it feels very funny in the beginning that you're your brand, and so you have to again consider the boundaries of how much of you that you're going to give away. With my family, at first I talked in like initials, and I didn't really, I would talk about them, but I wouldn't really bring them into it. And then they're a big part of my life, and so I asked them, if they wanted
Mhm.
um, to be named, and and even now, if I have a picture that I'm going to share and they're in it, I'll say, is this okay that I put this up, and make sure that
Mhm.
everybody's groovy with it. So, I always think, does this need, I think anybody on social media, it doesn't matter who you are or what you should really have a have a think for a second. Does this need to be shared? Does this need to be said?
Right.
Does anybody, need to know this? Or is this, going to help any matters or anything? And secondly, am I willing to give this of myself? Am I willing for people to know this? And I'm pretty open, but there are things where I'm like, no, that's just for me. That's just for my
Yeah.
family. That's just for my friends. This is just my little zone. Just leave that.
Good. Yeah, those
And
boundaries are important.
well, you listen to your gut, and
Mhm.
if there's one thing, your gut will very rarely steer you wrong. And for some
Mhm.
bizarre reason, we second guess it. Um,
Mhm.
but I've learned to, if I have just the barest inkling, if I'm tweeting something, I'll be like, no. I really want to say that. I want that out in the world. That's how I feel, but I'm not feeling right about that. Delete. And
Mhm.
it's and yeah, protect yourself in that way. Listen to your gut.
Okay. So we're coming to the end of our hour. That happened really quickly. But I have a really good question. You've mentioned a lot about how you bring your experiences and your readers' experiences and people that you meet into your books. Will COVID-19 make a presence in any of your upcoming books? Is that going to impact any of those?
I think I already mentioned it in one of my
Oh, did
books.
you?
Yeah,
Oh, you did. Okay.
but not that it's been published. Yeah, I
Oh,
think
okay.
I wrote a book, and I think one of the characters said something like, "You would think they're personally responsible for the coronavirus." So yeah, I mean, it is. Am I going to write a quarantine book? I don't know. I never say. My thing is never say never. I have said I'm never
Right.
going to write that character story, and then I've written that character story. So you never know.
Uh-huh.
If the spirit moves me, or if it comes up, I'll go with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think our last question is going to be any suggestions to new writers on what not to do when it comes to publishing and marketing?
Um, well, uh, I would say that the big things that I learned, uh, and it's actually probably good to reiterate this, is that uh, you don't engage when people give you bad reviews. One of the things that was really huge when I first started was Amazon had forums, and I'm sure they
Mhm.
still do. And so the independent craze was just beginning, and a lot of authors would go on those forums to sell their books. And these forums and these blog groups and these reader groups and stuff, they're a community. These
Mhm.
people, they might not know each other, but they know each other. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so when you insert yourself in that process to sell yourself, it's not, it's not a nice thing to do. You don't want to be sitting
Mhm.
at dinner with your friends and then have somebody come up to you and say, hey, would you buy this beautiful set of pots and pans? No, I'm eating dinner with my friends. Leave me alone. So I just and the other thing too is that's really important is that this is a business, and as much as it's incredibly personal and you put your heart and your soul in your books, in the end it's a business, and you have to
Mhm.
and when you're at work, you respect the people that you're working with. So you respect the industry, you respect your
Mhm.
genre, you respect your fellow writers, and you respect your readers. And
Mhm.
so you just behave in a professional manner. That does not mean you can't have any personality, but
Mhm.
treat it as the business that it is. And the people around you, your team. This is a huge. There's all these cottage industries of formatters and designers and cover designers and newsletter operators and web. They all need, this these are your coworkers. These are your
Mhm.
colleagues, and just behave professionally and respectfully.
It's a really good call out. I think that's a great way to wrap up. I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time and sharing such great information with us.
You're welcome. I was really pleased to be asked. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for all of our attendees, we appreciate you joining us as well. Just a reminder, a recording of today's session will be available tomorrow on our YouTube channel. You'll also get a follow-up email that has the link to the recorded session on YouTube if you want to watch it again or share it with your friends. But as always, thank you for joining us and happy publishing.